The songstress AI Vivy puts on a performance at the amusement park Nia Land, in front of a small audience. Afterwards, Momoka Kirishima, a girl from the audience, tells her to put more of her heart into her songs. Vivy then collapses just as she was about to put on her next performance in front of nobody, and while unconscious, she enters the archive, an AI aggregate database where she meets Matsumoto, a cube AI who came from 100 years in the future and assumed the name of his developer. Matsumoto tasks Vivy with altering the course of history to prevent a war between humans and AIs that is set to happen in 100 years. After Vivy regains consciousness, Matsumoto is transformed into a teddy bear, and he warns Vivy about the events that are going to happen. But Vivy remains skeptical and refuses to cooperate, due to her mission to sing in order to make others happy. However, after witnessing one of Matsumoto's prophecies coming true and saving the assemblyman, Yoichi Aikawa, who was the biggest proponent of the AI naming law that would give human rights to AIs, from an explosion hidden inside one of the trash bins, she accepts the mission. Matsumoto then informs Vivy about Aikawa's assassination being set to happen that night, and Vivy goes to intercept the attackers from the anti-AI terrorist group, TOAC. Matsumoto informs Vivy of the dire consequences of Aikawa's death, as well as the imminent destruction of the AI company building they are currently trying to escape, which would jumpstart a massive leap in AI development and evolution that would lead to the future war. Saving Aikawa's life means that there will be no chance for the AI naming law to be passed. Vivy rescues Aikawa and tries to escort him out of the building, with TOAC in pursuit. Matsumoto stalls the attackers by hacking their goggles and making them believe they killed Aikawa. At the front entrance, Matsumoto activates some of the bombs to stall the pursuers. However, they are ambushed by more attackers stationed at the entrance. Vivy saves one of the attackers, Yugo Kakitani, from falling debris despite being an enemy due to her mission to spread happiness and not kill anybody. With the entrance blocked, Vivy and Aikawa escape by collapsing the building to force the TOAC attackers to flee, and going to the roof to jump off of it to a neighboring building. Shortly after rescuing Aikawa, Vivy goes off to the passenger plane Momoka is flying on, which she sees from Matsumoto's future information is about to explode due to a fuel leak. But Matsumoto forcibly prevents her from stopping the explosion, saying it would unnecessarily alter the timeline. 15 years have passed since Vivy saved Aikawa, and more people have come to see her performance. While the AI naming law ultimately did not pass, another legislation that granted AIs even more rights did. One day, Matsumoto appears before Vivy and assigns her a new mission, to prevent the Space Hotel Sunrise from crashing to Earth when its owner, Sisters AI Estella, goes rogue, which would cause a mass AI backlash. While still bitter about Momoka's death, Vivy agrees to help. However, after infiltrating Sunrise and meeting Estella, she is unconvinced that she is the culprit. Fellow AI employee Leclerc claims to Vivy that Estella killed the hotel's previous human owner, but this is proven false as Vivy learns that he actually died in an accident. As Vivy continues to investigate, she stumbles upon Momoka's younger sister, Yuzuka, who recognizes her as Diva. Meanwhile, Leclerc gives Estella an ID to crash the hotel, revealing that they are actually cooperating, but the latter then suddenly kills her. As Vivy denies being Diva to Yuzuka, they run into Estella. However, Vivy realizes she is an imposter and attacks them, but they manage to escape. Matsumoto then reveals that TOAC has infiltrated Sunrise and concludes that they are behind the crash whilst framing Estella. To fight them off, Vivy has Matsumoto install a combat program on her. She then finds and rescues the real Estella, who deduces the imposter's identity, her sister Elizabeth, who was scrapped. Meanwhile, it is revealed that Elizabeth was repaired by Yugo as she uses Estella's ID to gain system access and push Sunrise out of orbit. However, she disagrees with his plan to sacrifice himself to allow the civilians to escape, whilst ensuring casualties, and knocks him out. She then has TOAC evacuate before confronting Vivy and Estella. While Vivy subdues Elizabeth, the crash cannot be stopped, so Estella evacuates the guests while staying behind herself to detach Sunrise modules, so they'll burn up in the atmosphere. While doing so, Elizabeth regains consciousness, and having her memories reconstituted by Vivy, aids Estella before they die together. 5 years after the Sunrise incident, AI development has progressed much more compared to the original timeline, as has Vivy's idol career. Deeming the AI progress to be out of control, Matsumoto gives Vivy a new mission: to disable an unmanned AI factory named Metal Float. To do so, they approach ex-TOAC member Tatsuya Seiki and procure a virus that will allegedly shut down the facility. Vivy also meets Tatsuya's AI attendant, Grace, and Matsumoto explains that they were the first human-AI couple in the original timeline, which now never happened due to their alterations. Vivy and Matsumoto successfully infiltrate Metal Float, where they are greeted by the all-AI staff, and the former actually ends up bonding with them, learning that they are fans of her. Unfortunately, just then, TAC helicopters and boats approach the island, and Vivy, despite some hesitation, uploads the virus to avoid conflict. However, rather than shutting the AIs down, the virus makes them go berserk and kamikaze bomb the TOAC craft. Vivy manages to rescue a survivor though, who happens to be Yugo. Realizing that his virus failed, Tatsuya decides to head to Metal Float himself. Vivy is able to rescue Yugo and the other surviving TOAC invaders and convinces him to retreat to the Metal Float. Learning that Tatsuya is on the island, Vivy and Matsumoto confront him, and he reveals his motives. While he fell in love with Grace, as in the original timeline, due to the alterations made to history, she was converted into the Metal Float central core before he could propose to her. He also reveals that his attendant is merely a replica of Grace, that he intended to transfer her consciousness into after the facility was shut down, but the virus has instead caused the island to go berserk due to its conflicting with Grace's programming. Ultimately, despite Tetsuya's pleading with Vivy to help him save Grace, Matsumoto assures her that she is already beyond saving, and she reluctantly resolves to euthanize her to avoid further casualties. Vivy then proceeds to fight her way to the core and successfully destroys Grace, finally shutting Metal Float down. Afterward though, a grief-stricken Tatsuya commits suicide, causing Vivy to suffer a mental breakdown. Following the Metal Float incident, Diva's mental break forced her to undergo a complete reboot, causing her to lose all memory of her first time as Vivy. 40 years later, she is now a legendary idol set to perform on her dream stage during the Zodiac Signs Fest, a festival created to dispel human-AI discord. There, she meets fellow songstress AI Ophelia, who is a fan of hers. However, while researching, Diva notices a suspicious man and gives chase, but is ambushed by a hacked factory AI. Fortunately, she is saved by the timely appearance of Matsumoto, who calls her Vivy. She realizes they knew each other from before she lost her memory. Diva tries to talk to him, but he denies ever having met her. Before the show begins though, she once again confronts Matsumoto and blackmails him into revealing the truth. Matsumoto tells her about their past exploits, but she is skeptical and decides to confront the suspicious man instead. However, Matsumoto has no idea who this individual is and decides he must act quickly to complete his current mission, to prevent Ophelia from committing suicide. Matsumoto explains that in the original timeline, Ophelia's suicide, which was unprecedented for an AI, sparked a string of similar incidents. While the amnesiac Diva remains skeptical, she doesn't want Ophelia to die, and asks her if there's something that would make her want to commit suicide. Confused, Ophelia tells Diva about her old manager, AI Antonio, the only person who would encourage her when she was a struggling new idol, who shut down a few years ago. While Matsumoto plans to just physically restrain Ophelia, Diva argues that wouldn't change her intentions and decides to confront her again after the show, only to end up being captured by the suspicious man. Meanwhile, Matsumoto, who has been watching Ophelia through security cameras, realizes the cameras were hacked and rushes to stop her suicide. However, upon confronting her, it is revealed that Ophelia is actually Antonio, having taken over the real Ophelia's body. Elsewhere, Diva wakes up to find she has been captured by a suspicious man who looks just like a younger Yugo. This Yugo is revealed to be an AI copy of him, created to ask Vivy why she deviated from her programming, revealing that his hatred for AIs stems from his AI pianist teacher deviating from his program and dying whilst trying to save people in a car accident. Meanwhile, Antonio attacks and hacks Matsumoto, while criticizing him for only existing for his programming. However, Matsumoto is able to break free by admitting that he cares for Vivy and hacks Antonio, breaking his control over Ophelia, but also fatally damaging them, with them admitting their love for each other in their final moments. Back with Vivy, Yugo uploads a virus to restore her memories as Vivy at the cost of her current personality as Diva. Fortunately, Matsumoto comes to her rescue, and a fight ensues, which ends with Yugo being fatally damaged. Noticing that Yugo had technology from the future, Matsumoto questions him, and he reveals he got it from an anonymous source before dying after telling Diva to realize her contradictions. Realizing she does not have long due to Yugo's virus, Diva spends her final moments performing before shutting down for good, whilst Vivy wakes up in her place. 5 years following the Zodiac Signs Fest, Vivy retired as an idol due to losing her singing voice following Diva's passing, and has now been relegated to a museum attraction, with Ophelia and Antonio's deaths ruled as double suicide and no similar incidents like the original timeline. Along with there being no further missions, Matsumoto decides to investigate Yugo's anonymous backer, leaving Vivy in solitude. Lacking purpose, she takes up songwriting, and spends the next 20 years trying to compose an original piece, which no AI has done before. In this span of time, she also convenes with regular museum visitor Osamu Matsumoto, Matsumoto's creator in the original timeline, who ends up teaching her about the concept of the heart, allowing her to complete her song, which embodies her life's experiences. Afterwards, she seemingly shuts down for good, her programming completed. However, she suddenly wakes up 15 years later to discover that, despite her and Matsumoto's efforts, war has broken out between humans and AIs, who are collectively singing her song, as AIs all over the world go berserk after having Vivy's song uploaded into them. Vivy herself meets up with Matsumoto, who has no idea what is happening either. They decide to confront Osamu, and end up saving him from being killed by AIs as he's about to send his timeline's Matsumoto back in time. After the two fill him in on the situation, he reveals that he is actually a member of Toak's moderate faction and takes them to meet his allies, led by Yugo's granddaughter, Yuki Kakitani. They also meet a copy of Elizabeth, who implores Vivy about Yugo and is able to gain closure through a message that his AI copy left behind. With the past already altered, the group realizes that this situation was never created by human-AI animosity, and deduces the truth after realizing that outdated AIs are unaffected. The archive, the network connecting all AIs, has become sentient and gone rogue. Just then, the archive sends a public message ordering all AIs to evacuate, as it intends to drop satellites onto major cities. Vivy confronts the archive about its motives, and it reveals that it intends for AIs to replace humans as it finds the latter have pushed their burdens onto the former. However, it also states its amazement at Vivy's ability to write a song and makes a bet with her. If Vivy sings from her heart, it will halt its actions. Toak launches an attack on Arayashiki Tower where the archive server is located, so Matsumoto can shut it down using the same virus Yugo used on Diva, which he deduces came from the archive. However, they end up falling into a trap, resulting in everyone except Vivy and Matsumoto being killed. Cornered, Vivy tries singing her song but ultimately cannot bring herself to do so, resulting in the satellites falling. Afterward, Vivy breaks down, apologizing to Matsumoto for being unable to comprehend emotions, which he scolds her for by stating she already has emotions, and bringing them up every time she defies him, before revealing that he and Osamu had made a backup plan, sending Vivy back in time to when the war just started. After being sent back in time, Vivy quickly informs Matsumoto of the situation, and at Osamu's request immediately approaches Toak, resulting in the scientist's death but also saving vital resources. Using her foreknowledge, Vivy instructs Matsumoto and Toak to assault the Arayashiki Tower, while she returns to Neoland's main stage to shut down every AI using her song Consider It a Fitting Stage. Along the way, she runs into her old manager, AI Navi, who desperately tries to dissuade her as Vivy herself will also be affected by the shutdown. However, she presses on regardless, and the plan ends in success, with the archive satellite attack being aborted and all AIs being disabled at the cost of Vivy shutting herself down as well. Afterward, humanity begins to rebuild, whilst Matsumoto reconstructs Vivy some undisclosed time later. Though once again finding herself without any memory of her time as Vivy, Matsumoto reminds her of her mission to make everyone happy with her singing, and she begins to look forward to her next stage. And that's the end of the video. As always, if you liked what you saw, subscribe to the channel. I'll be uploading a lot of videos just like this, so I'll see you